my second video about the Bible. I've been asked to do these videos and I'm quite glad to do them because I've studied the Bible a bit, so I know a bit about it. So today I want to talk about the book of Genesis, and just to do kind of a general introduction to the book of Genesis. The word Genesis means beginnings. It's from a Greek word meaning beginnings, and the Greeks gave this name to this Hebrew book and Bible. The very first book. So obviously the first book would talk about the beginnings or the origins of things. So the book of Genesis can be divided into four parts. There's the Adam story, the story about Adam and Eve and his children, Cain and Abel and so on. There's a story about Noah, the Noah story, and his children and the flood and so on. Then there's a story about Abraham, which is a fantastic story, very interesting. Story of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. They're known as the patriarchs. So that covers the whole book of Genesis, and it's about way back in time and the things that happened. So today I want to go to the very first chapter of Genesis. And it says at the very beginning of Genesis, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was without form and void. It had nothing there. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And then we're told that God said, let there be light. So this chapter, which is just about 21 or 22 verses of the Bible, this chapter is trying to set the scene. It talks about God creating the heavens, which is the sky, and then the moon and the sun that were put there, and the birds that fly in the sky. And then he created the sea as well, and he created the sea creatures, the fishes and other animals in the sea. And he created land then as well. The dry land appeared. And he created the animals that walk on the land and that live on the land. And of course his masterpiece then was the human being. He said, let us make man in our own image and likeness. So the human being is the closest thing resembling God. And God is an artist. For a long time I never heard that, I never thought that, but once I knew somebody and he told me that God is an artist. Just like an artist takes out paints and paints beautiful colours, so God made a very beautiful world. And that chapter about creation says that God saw all that he made and it was very good. So creation in itself is very good. And of course now Pope Francis, and there's a whole group of people trying to tell us to take care of the environment. Species of animals and plants and everything are dying away. We have destroyed the world in many ways. And we've forgotten how beautiful it was, and we now need to preserve creation and to preserve the planet. And that's what the very first chapter of the Bible said as well. God saw all that he made, and it was very good. And when he created man, he told human beings to look after creation, to take care of it. And in a sense, the language he used was the language that was later on used for the kings of Israel, to take care of, and to have a kind of a ownership and also a stewardship, and to govern it and to take care of it and to treat it well so that it would continue. So the themes there in that first chapter of Genesis are very much about that, about preserving the wonder and the beauty of the world, preserving that. And of course one of the gifts of the Holy Spirit is wonder and awe in God's presence. So when we look at creation, especially this time of the year, with the plants, the animals, the flowers, all the beauty that's there, it fills us with wonder and awe, and it brings us back to the God who created it. Because only God could have made something so beautiful. Only a great artist could have made the beauty of this world. So that's some of the themes, some of the ideas in the first chapter of Genesis. But there's a little bit more as well. Because at the very end of that chapter, we're told that God did all that creation in 7 days, and on the seventh day he rested. And that's the most interesting thing, because when that book of Genesis was written, they probably were in exile in Babylon, and everything had been taken away from the Jewish people. Their king, their land, their temple, their priesthood, everything was taken away. Their scriptures probably, and all the worship that they did in the temple. Nothing was left. So they were in a terrible state. They were in a terrible crisis, as we would say nowadays. everything had got as bad as it was ever going to get. The only thing that we know of that they held on to very tightly was the Sabbath day. Every 7 days they rested, because that was something they had, and they weren't going to let that go, because they could remember, and they were able to count days, and they were able to say, well, now this again is the 7th day, this is the Sabbath, we'll pray and we'll rest. And that's what they did. So it's very, very interesting that the very first book of the Bible, even God himself rests on the Sabbath day. He obeys the Sabbath. And of course the message is very clear. If God himself obeyed the Sabbath rule to rest after creation, we have no choice but to obey that as well. And we have to obey the rule and the commandment to rest on the Sabbath day. Later on it was inserted into the 10 Commandments, which are so important for the Jewish people and indeed for us as well. So the importance of rest cannot be stressed enough. People nowadays are so busy, we're so frantically busy, and we somehow fool ourselves into thinking that the more we do, the better we are, the more we achieve, the more successful we'll be. But that is not really right. That's not strictly true. And we need to rest, we need to take a day off a week, we need to take time to be with God, to pray to him, and to rest with God in that sense. And later on in the book of Hebrews, the letter to the Hebrews, that's discussed, and they thrash out what resting on the 7th day means, entering the rest of God. And eventually they talk about heaven as a place of rest permanently, a permanent Sabbath, where you rest in God. And that's the encouragement that we are encouraged to do. Obviously we do all we can, and we help the creation that God has made by doing our work, and we enhance creation by what we do. And we make the world a better place, and obviously we're encouraged to do that. But we also need to rest, because we need to keep in touch with God. We need to spend time with God, to spend time resting in God. And the Bible, in the very first page, stresses that. The need to pray, the need to spend time with God, the need to look at the beauty of creation and just enjoy it. So hopefully that's what you will do now as spring is coming. And I do wish you all the best, and we continue on through the book of Genesis. It may take a while to get through the book of Genesis, but at least touch on a theme or two, a lovely little picture. And the Bible is a treasure house. It's like a big jewellery shop or whatever. There are many gems and jewels in there. And if I can fling out a few gems and a few jewels as I go along in these videos, that might encourage you to read the actual Bible and to discover a lot more jewels, a lot more beautiful things in the Bible, which I haven't mentioned, but it might get you going, and that's the hope, that I will get you to do that. So I wish you God's blessing, and we hope that this video will help you to read the Bible. I can talk about it, but I can't read it for you, so you do need to read it yourself. I would above all encourage you to read the Bible. If it's only a chapter a day, and maybe read it slowly and carefully, things will jump out at you, because the Holy Spirit inspired the Bible. But the Holy Spirit also inspires those who read it. So if you read it, don't be surprised when all kinds of things jump out at you, and you really get surprised. And that's what I hope will happen. So God bless.